Hello, it's Jim Hutchens for the Jerusalem Connection Spot Report for this week. Well, the White House is livid, and so are a number of the Democrats, evidently. And this is over the fact that Speaker of the House, John Boehner, has invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel to come and speak to a joint session of Congress in the early part of March. And he's been invited to do that because of the president's refusal to bring additional sanctions on Iran with regard to their nuclear capability. Let me read you some excerpts from an article recently. Still angered by the House Speaker John Boehner's circumvention of protocol and the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's acceptance to speak before Congress, congressional Democrats are reportedly considering a boycott of the Netanyahu address to a joint session of Congress in March, according to the Israeli daily Haaretz. Now, Haaretz is probably Israel's most liberal newspaper. The diplomatic brouhaha began when Boehner, an Israeli ambassador to the U.S., set up the event that is aimed at having Netanyahu support the opposing view, namely the president's position on Iranian sanctions and legislation. Now, this supposes that the Israeli ambassador had something to do with this. I don't know that there's evidence of that in fact. Despite Boehner's insistence that he acted within his powers, Democrats see the failure of coordination with the administration as a hostile act that the Israeli leader is contributing to, prompting criticism from many normally supportive of Israel and its leader. Democratic Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi has apparently taken the point for the White House, expressing harsh criticism toward Netanyahu and suggesting that he used television as the platform for his speech rather than the congressional rostrum. For his part, Israeli Ambassador Ron Dermer insists he was told it was the Speaker's prerogative to extend the unilateral invitation and that Boehner would deal with the White House. I would say to you, it is the Speaker's prerogative. He does. The Israeli ambassador doesn't have the authority to invite Netanyahu to speak before Congress. Only Boehner could do that. There was a time when congressional support was bipartisan. There was no question about it. Didn't make any difference where the presidential, where the executive branch was, or the rest of the government, but there was strong support, and that was a reflection of the people of the United States. That evidently is no longer the case. There are diminishing returns, it appears, regarding the support of Democrats for Israel, and certainly for Netanyahu's speech coming up here. And I would say that this attitude is in keeping with the growing attitude that's reflecting itself in nothing less than anti-Semitism across the world. France is experiencing it. That's been in the news very much lately. The number of people that immigrated to Israel in 2015 were double those who came in 2014 were double those who came in 2013, and they expect that it will be like 15,000, which would be double that of 2014 this year, 2015. The Ukraine is the same thing. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. And Jews more and more are considering, is it safe to be in Europe? They're not asking yet, is it safe to be in the United States? But in secular universities, anti-Semitism is rampant. And this appears to be what's going on in Congress, especially with regard to the lessening of support among the Democrats, to be contributing, certainly something that's going on at the same time in the United States. Who is left? Well, I would suggest to you that finally, ultimately, we will find that those non-Jews who support Israel do so on the basis of their understanding of the Bible, their conviction that the Bible has the last word. And there are those who believe in the Bible being the last word, but they have their eschatology in error, their understanding of the last things. If Israel is not a part of your eschatology positively, then it's not of the Scriptures. Amillennialism, postmillennialism, preterism is not of God. I would say to you unequivocally that premillennialism, that the return, the coming of the Messiah before his millennial reign, is the one and only form of Scripture that will pass the test, ultimately. Matter of fact, prior to that, I think we can expect what Jesus said. And he said this initially, I'm reading in Matthew chapter 10. He says that, and he's speaking to Jews at this point. He says, on my account, you will be brought before governors and kings as witnesses to them and to the Gentiles. And when they arrest you, do not worry about what you're to say and how you're to say it. At that time, it will be given to you what to say. For it will not be you who are speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. All men will hate you, speaking of Jews at this point, but by implication, those who are followers of Jesus. And that includes us. All men will hate you because of me, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. John takes it a step further. In John chapter 16, he says this, in fact, a time is coming when anyone who kills you will think he is offering service to God. They will do this. They'll do such things because they have not known the Father or me. And I've told you this so that when the time comes, you'll remember that I warned you. That's what we can expect. That's not to say that all Democrats are going to stop their support of Israel. But it does say, apparently, that they're becoming fewer and fewer and more far between. And Jesus says this through the Apostle John in Revelation chapter 14, verse 12. This calls for patient endurance on the part of the saints who obey God's commandments and who remain faithful to Jesus. God grant us grace to remain faithful to Jesus in our support of Israel, our support of the Jewish people, our support of Jesus. Till next week, Od Ki Yavo Shiloh, or until Messiah comes, Yivareka Yehovah. Yehovah bless you and yours.